point like Atkinson Park, Iselia Park, Bell Park. And then the 5 little lots that were purchased by the PDA before we started really having to do it. It's the old Abrams lot. She never owned parking. There's 4 little lots that were next to that. So they assembled 2 came from the Irwins and 2 came from a lady down in Shakedale. They're assembling those 5 lots together. It'll be a 1-acre lot, and there'll be some Sentinel-looking building. The plan proposed to the council in 2011 just called it a Sentinel building. Like if you go to the other side of the railroad tracks, it's supposed to be industrial in character, matching the other side like the ice house, and it sits on a 1-acre lot. We haven't devised a land use for it. So it will be taking proposals for it. But it has its own parking. It'll come with its own parking lot. And so far, the people who kicked around looking at it, just look at it for a whole practice. We've had some people who wanted it for retail. It was originally supposed to be we were having staging problems, so we decided to move that across the street and then back. They're supposed to be 3 sitting on the side as you go past the park. McDowell gets restored. One building in the center, and then the apartment building on the right.
I didn't know that.
Should be 3 Yes. And all of that should be on the 2011 plan, and I can show it to you. But the idea is to use sense of destination arrival. All these look like industrial. They all match the other 100 feet on the other side of the railroad tracks. And then after you come under and you pass the industrial area, we enter the commercial area proper. But we've had some people think it's a retail. We've had, the council's pretty firm that they didn't see more residential. And so one use of it, proposal that we had to look at, it was looking at commercial downstairs and 4 apartments upstairs. But mixed use is the closest it'll get to residential. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it answers the question.
Good.
Printing was too small on the pictures.
If you ever want a handout, give me a call.
Yeah, nice try, Jimmy. Jimmy.
Man with the dollar is sitting right over there.
Chris finds it easier for trouble up at least 2 to 3 rows back. There she goes.
Call our meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you to our council meeting this evening. I would ask, please, if you would, if you have cell phones, to please turn them off at this time. I would ask you to stand, please. We'll have pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Blanton and prayer by Council Member Latham.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd like to pray, please remain standing if you'd like to. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we come together, that we come here to seek the best interests of our citizens, the best interests of the people in Madison. Open our hearts, ears, and mind that we receive your guidance so that the things we do glorify your Son's name. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilmember Wagenhouse is going to be a little late. She texted said she would be a little late. I'm not sure if you'll make contact with Councilmember Reed. I'm sure she. Okay. This time we have approval of minutes of our previous meetings. Our regular meeting on May 8th, 2023, and our call meeting on May 26th, 2023. If I could get a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
Yeah, Mayor, I had one little very minor correction on the meeting minutes of the 8th, the regular meeting, the very last section. I think she's got a motion on the District 5 ballot. Blanton made the motion, and then it says Peters Reed. I believe that was the second, but I think the word second got dropped. I will, if there's no other additions, I would be glad to move acceptance of the meeting with or the meeting minutes with the comments. My compliments to the city clerk for doing a really good job of summarizing some very important and lengthy discussions. Both of those minutes were really good, both for the the May 8th regular meeting and then the work session and called meeting of May 26th.
I second the motion, Mayor.
There is no discussion. All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Vote unanimously. Is there anything that needs to be added to our agenda for tonight? If not, before we go to our regular session, I would just like to read a proclamation. I would like I will read the proclamation, then I ask the young lady to come down to accept it. Whereas the office of the municipal court clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the municipal court clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal court clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal court clerks have pledged to be even mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas the municipal court clerks serve as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas municipal court clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal court through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and other training of their state. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of office of the municipal court clerks. Now therefore, I, Fred Perriman, Mayor of the City of Madison, Georgia, do hereby recognize the week of June 5th through June 9th, 2023 as Municipal Court Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our Municipal Court Clerk, Ms. Katie Dunworth, for the vital services she performs in exemplary dedication to our community she represents, passed and duly adopted in regular session this 12th day of June, 2023. Fred Perriman, Mayor, I will ask our color plate to come down to please accept this proclamation. Thanks so much.
Hold on one second.
First thing on our agenda tonight is Zachary Williams, on behalf of Zachary Williams Development Company, LLC, is requesting a conditional use for 1081 Bramblewood Drive, 036B, 009B, and 1091 Bramblewood Drive, 036B, 009, to allow an apartment house. Monica?
Yes, sir. I beg your indulgence. Bryce Jack is out of town today with a family matter, and so I am the one filling in this evening. You have an application for the parcels as identified by Mr. Zach Williams, representing Z. Williams Development Company, LLC. This is a conditional use for an application. They currently enjoy a conditional use on this property. There are two parcels, and they enjoy a conditional use for both parcels for a duplex. For reasons that I will leave to Mr. Williams, they believe that it is in their best interest to ask for a conditional use for an apartment house combining the two lots of record. So those two lots of record are identified here in purple, and then the third duplex that was approved at the same time exists to the lower left of that. And so that one duplex was constructed, and there are two remaining duplex lots that enjoy a conditional use. So Mr. Williams is proposing to combine those two lots to a full acreage of 1.28 acres, and instead of building two duplexes, to build two apartment units. This did go to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended a 6-0 approval. I'm standing ready to answer any questions that you have, but I have a couple of conditions that we purported and that the Planning Commission bought into. The first one is the typical expiration that we like to see on conditional uses so that we know they just don't hang out there in perpetuity. The first one is conditional use expires if no permits are drawn within 12 months. The second is the conditional use will expire if construction has not begun within 18 months. And then the third condition is that the applicant will merge the lots into a single lot of record. I'll also note that reviewing Bryce's packet, I have another thought or two for you that I think that needs some discussion. One is specifically the requirement that for this conditional use, there has to be a review of scale and compatibility with the area. So I would point you to both footprint and building height. Building height is capped at 35 feet, and that is a given in the area. We also scaled off the width, and the width is proposed at roughly 57 feet. Roughly 52 feet based on scale. And we measured all the single-family dwellings across the street, and they are ranging between 52 and 57. So that addressed kind of some of the scale issues that we had in terms of concern. And then just as an underlying issue, since everybody gets hung up on density, I want to make sure that you still pay attention that every unit required in the city of Madison still requires a 1/4 acre. and 1.28 acres would still allow 0.25 for each unit being proposed. So that's all I have for you this evening, and I'll rely on Mr. Williams to fill in any additional details, and I'll answer any questions that you may
Can I
have.
just ask you one question?
Yes.
Before we get into our hearing, we received communications that it was not properly advertised, so was it properly advertised, this zoning?
Based on my feedback, because the manager gave me that information, we pulled all 4 ads in the paper. So it did appear as noticed on 427, 54, 511, and 518. That does meet the state minimum notice requirements. If there's another deficiency with notice, if somebody will bring that to my attention, I'll be happy to address it. But in terms of advertisement, it was properly advertised for the 4 consecutive weeks.
Thanks, Monica.
Were there other public comments that came in beside the question about the notice?
We're fixing to open up a hearing now, Eric.
Okay.
Yeah.
If, I have one more clarification question for Monica
Okay.
before she goes away. I either misheard or you may have misspoke.
Okay.
It sounded like you said 2 apartment buildings on that combined lot.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry, let me try that again. If I misspoke, it's possible. They were previously zoned in 2005 for 2012 for 3 duplexes on 3 separate lots of record.
Okay.
And then the request this evening is to combine the remaining 2 lots and make 1 lot of record and do 1 apartment house.
That consists of 4 units as detailed in the application.
That is correct. And if
Very
I
good. All right.
misspoke, you have my apologies.
No worries, I may have misheard. Thanks, Monica.
My pleasure.
Our public hearing is now open. We will give each side 15 minutes. There anyone here to speak against this zoning change? There anyone here to speak for this zoning change? Mr. Coates, if you would state your name and where you live.
George Coates, Madison, Georgia, 773 Cooks Hill Road, Madison, Georgia. And the reason I'm speaking against it because I'm sitting on meetings and calls month after month where Morgan County needs more housing for new school teachers coming in, other people coming with no other places to live. So I think this would be a good opportunity for open up houses. And I don't see anything with the guideline as Monica read. So I'm all for the places.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Sure. Monica, I think you had something else.
Yes, sir, I apologize. In reviewing my notes to make sure that I gave you everything, I wanted to also mention one other thing. So parking is required for single-family and duplexes and apartment houses. And normally for single-family, we see 1 to 2 spaces, and we see those typically go in a driveway or sometimes, occasionally, we see a turnout in the front yard. Front yard parking is not necessarily something we want to see. We did site check this today. There is a spread of material in the front yard for parking. However, if you look at your site plan in your packet, once you put all the units together, you are looking at a much bigger parking area. Staff would like to further recommend that as a condition, the parking go down a driveway and into not the front yard. And that is because once you take 4 units and put it together and you have at least 8 spaces, perhaps 10 if you provide guest parking, that starts putting a parking lot in a front yard, and that is not compatible with the surrounding single-family residential structures. So provided that parking be put in the side yard or the rear yard, that would be a good condition to consider, and I apologize that I skipped it on my first round note.
Thanks, Monica. Anyone else here to speak for? If not, this public hearing is closed. And it comes back to our council member for further discussion. Eric, I think you want to say something earlier Councilmember Joyce?
I just, my earlier question was, were there any other public comments received other than the questioning about notice? Either by Monica or city clerk or yourself, Mayor?
No further.
No? All right, thank you.
There are no further comments. It's back to this council for a vote. For Mr. Zachary Williams, on behalf of Williams Development Company LLC, requesting a conditional use at 1081 Brammerwood Drive 036B 009B at 1091 Brammerwood Drive.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I
sir.
move
Go ahead.
That we approve of the conditional use of an apartment house for 036B, 0098, and 036B, 009, based on the application, public hearing, discussions, and consideration. I also move that the conditions listed here be applied.
Also, the new provision of the property down to
And also with the new provision for driving. Can't hear me on this?
No.
Okay.
Well, usually I can blow people out of the whole building when I start talking, but do I need to repeat all that?
Did the clerk get it?
So you added,
Yeah.
Okay.
I would second the motion if I got it right that you've added number 4 as the parking lot on
Yeah.
the side or the rear. I'd second the motion.
There any more discussion from my council? If not, all in favor, show of hands. Opposes none, vote unanimously. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir, sure.
I just want to thank you, Zach, for going away, getting a good education, and coming back and investing in this community and the time that you spent. I got to know you a few years ago. I really appreciate your work, your effort, and the way you're considerate of everybody here. And it's so great to have somebody go off to college and come back and be a vital member of this community. And for that, I applaud you.
Thank you, sir. And it's always good to see our young men come back to our community and make provision for young families in our community. We talk about workforce homes, workforce houses. This is the way to do it. Thank you, sir. City of Madison is proposing a text amendment to Article 6 regarding planning commission's meeting procedures, revisions to standards for zoning decisions, updating other procedural elements. Monica?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm going to try to do my best to explain this. So we have essentially two components of this amendment. So the legislature passed an additional amendment to ZPL. I had Frank Jenkins provide that information. I think Ashley circulated it to you. If you remember, we actually did a training on that on October 13th in '22. And we knew that that was coming down the pipe. The county's already made their arrangements. And so essentially what it does is it pushes for conditional use applications and for variance applications. It doubles the window. So applicants have to provide information well in advance, and that it pushes our public notice further out. So therefore, the amendments were written to include and address those. Now, Bryce got a little excited about that and decided that he would make that for all of our activities. And that's how it went to the Planning Commission, is all zoning actions, whether city initiated or not city initiated, whether rezoning or whether conditional uses or variances. And once we got feedback from the Planning Commission, their conversation was they would really like to see that extension expanded. However, legal advice from Frank Jenkins was very conservative. And he said that exposes the city, you need to limit it to where state law has specifically said you need to apply that for conditional uses and variances. And that's where his encouragement and advice was, to stick closer to the state law. So that's what I'm here before you sharing this evening. We knew that was coming, and we're expecting to be able to comply for that for our next set of zoning applications that are already in front of us. The second piece that has seemed to have drawn some consternation is the section that addresses large-scale document submissions at the last minute. And I want to be clear about this. This was something that both the county, the city, and all the little cities brought up for a discussion with Frank because it's become problematic. And so we told him how we were currently dealing with that, is that the design review commissions or the regulatory commissions are often either saying, no thank you, if they provide it at the meeting at the last minute, or they're saying, thank you for this information, please read what you would like in the record within your time frame, and then we'll return the document to you. Or they're saying, we'll take the information, and although we can't consider it tonight, and it won't be part of our record, we will submit that on, if it goes to the mayor and council, this is only pertaining to the planning commission, and it will be something that is available for use by the mayor and council. And the reason that's important is because the decision-making body cannot consume information that is exhaustive on the moment, on the fly. And so every government that was in that room talked about it. And they said, how do we make this even-handed so that every member of the public, not just the complainant or the respondent, has access to that same information, whether they're the applicant or the decision maker. So we went over with Frank what was a reasonable time frame for written comments. And he said, pick a time frame, 5 days out is fine, and make it applicable to everybody across the board so that the decision maker has the ability to respond to that information. So what you're seeing tonight is something that we discussed in October of '22 during legal training. It's in response to the political bodies asking for that to be addressed, and staff's concerned to be able to address those comments with research or in a timely manner. So I know that there will be plenty of public comment, so I'm going to cut myself off at that point, and I'll answer any questions that you may have for me this evening. And I'm going to depend on Mr. Jimmy to add and give us some ad hoc on that. But any other questions for me before I take a seat? So again, we're pushing the time frame out for conditional uses and variances. Mr. Jenkins recommends against that for city-initiated actions, even though the Planning Commission has asked for that. He thinks that's fraught. And then the last thing is we are requiring written submittals by a certain time period. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
catch Monica before she
Yes.
goes away.
I don't try to run away from you. I just,
No, I know, you're just trying to be expedient.
I'm trying to be expedient and timely.
Appreciate your expediency. We did read the staff report and the part where Mr. Jenkins made that recommendation, but there was no rationale for that. Do we know why he recommended it?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we had our discourse on the phone, and this is what he said on various things that we've heard about rezonings, is that there is too much opportunity for the city to fail in the due process execution of notifying everyone for a citywide rezoning or even an approximate rezoning. So say, for instance, if the city initiates a rezone, and this is specifically what we're talking about, is the rezone activity. So let's say the city initiates a rezone on several parcels, but let's talk about the one that might happen. And so if we follow the rule for conditional uses and variances, we would notify abutting property owners. What if it's a 3-acre lot with a 1/4-acre lot, and there's a 1/4-acre lot beyond that? Okay, so what if they feel that they were equally entitled to notice? And then, so I talked to Frank, I said, well, okay, so maybe we expand it beyond abutting owners. What if it is a proximity measure? Everything within 100 feet, everything. He's like, that's arbitrary. At what point is the person beyond that affected by that? If you feel like your neighborhood is affected by the traffic that a rezone might cause, and you don't receive notice, that leaves us open for challenge. He really suggested we stick with the state law. If you would like more discourse on that or more reasoning, that I will say, don't have a law degree, and that's my understanding of how Frank communicated it to me, is that the city invites more exposure every time we do more than the state minimum, and that we need to be very careful.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question also, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know if this is for you, Monica, or one of our 2 attorneys here tonight, but the recent changes that were made at the legislature in Atlanta, that we don't have a lot of choice about what we do with it.
No, sir, it's effective July 1st either way.
Correct. So that's the application deadline change from 30 to 45 days. It's the change in the legal ad from 15 to 30 days. It's the change in the sign posting from 15 to 30 days, and the minor thing about changing the phone number on the signs. Are those the items that the legislature passed that we don't have any choice but to accept and incorporate into our?
My understanding
Zone.
is what is written that Frank has reviewed does answer the state requirements. The only other thing that was in addition to that is Frank said that we're doing overkill with signage and we should dial it back because it's more than the state minimum. But my understanding, if I want to make sure I answered your question, my understanding is the review of this, as Frank says, it meets the state minimums.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Appreciate that. The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak against this text amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know that I'm speaking against it. I would just like to expand it and recommend to you that it be expanded a little bit. For the record, I'm Celia Murray, and my address is 535 South Main Street. Mr. Mayor, the Historic Madison Coalition, on whose behalf I speak tonight, advocates an open and transparent and participatory government. And there is nothing in state law that limits these changes to rezones or conditional uses. There's nothing that limits it to that. So why not have one uniform set of rules so everybody is very clear about what to expect by making these changes apply to all city commissions and meetings, including mayor and council meetings. The ads run in the paper are fine. The problem that citizens often have is the actual documents being loaded to the city's website. That's where we see them, is on the website. They're not included in the advertising, just the issue is included in the advertising. If things don't go into the city website in a timely fashion, where citizens can pull them down and read them and then make written comment, there is no opportunity to comment under this proposal. If the documents, the staff reports, et cetera, aren't on the city's website sufficiently in advance to allow 5 days' notice, there is no opportunity for public comment except at the meeting. And now, you know, very often, if the comment is long or a written comment is submitted that is lengthy, it's read it into the record or don't make it at all. Or read it into the record, but we're not going to consider it because there's too much material there. So what you're doing by adopting that position is providing less opportunity for public involvement, not more. The language that the city's proposed language actually suggests that the public have less time. Planning and zoning would like to have public comments 5 days in advance, but we can't possibly make comment 5 days in advance when very often the documents are not posted until 3 days in advance of the hearing. So then we have zero opportunity. So I suggest to you that there is absolutely nothing, no harm in requiring complete applications prior to setting and advertising public hearings for all review boards in the city. Very often there are supplements to the applications that come in late. Need to have the complete application, no modifications after it's submitted and advertised. We also urge you to require publication on the city's website of complete applications at the same time the legal notices are put in the paper. When the notice goes in the paper the first time, those documents should be made available on the city's website. Set the deadlines for agendas with public hearings to be posted online 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. If it's scheduled out and advertised 45 days in advance, there's no reason the agenda can't be put up so that everybody is clear. Most of us rely on the city's website to get this information. Require that staff reports be made available 2 weeks in advance. The proposal's being advertised 45 days in advance of the hearing, so why not 2 weeks for the staff report? Maybe it means staff has to be a little bit more diligent and a little bit more timely in having those documents available, but it benefits you as the decision makers as well as the public to be able to have that 2 weeks to review those. Additions or modifications of the staff report after that deadline should require a rescheduling of the public hearing. We shouldn't have to come in with and be confronted with changes to the staff reports in the last couple of days before the public hearing. And also require staff to post online the required summary of their meeting action documents. It's required in the city code, so let's put it online. Another thing that I would urge you to consider, and this is done in many areas, and this would take place of that notice of rezone concerns that Monica listed, is consider establishing a practice of holding neighborhood meetings ahead of the public hearings and zoning changes, including map amendments, text amendments, variances, and additional uses. That way the neighbors all can let you know how they think that change is going to impact their neighborhood. And that takes care of the, well, do you do it by proximity or you do it by abutting property owners? Neighborhood meetings would help an awful lot in that regard. Again, we just want transparency and the right to participate in a timely fashion. And the changes I've suggested, I think, would go a long way towards all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. And before I call on those, is there anyone else here to speak against this?
Mayor, council members, I'm Steve Whitcomb. I live at 805 Old Post Road here in Madison. And I'm not going to recap everything that has just been said, and I'm not necessarily for or against this particular proposal. I am very much for lengthening the time that the public has to look at and digest. I don't have ready access to lawyers and smart zoning folks that have got big educations in historical districts and zoning, and that's fine. I mean, that's my problem, not yours. But I do have experienced several times where I do look at agendas, and I do look before I come, usually when they come out and I get beamed online, and I appreciate that fact. But I look at some of these things, and it takes a smart individual. I'm not dumb, but I'm not a legal guy, to be able to digest it, and then to have conversations with neighbors or friends or those that are the big brains that live here in Madison. So I agree with some extension to the time of things being made public, easier access to it. Being able to surf into the dark web to find something is what I face sometimes, or feel like I'm facing. And so I don't know what the time frame is. I do agree in this latest proposal for 5 days for public comment, depending on how long things have been out here. If I happen to drop it in to the post office on Thursday night, it goes to Atlanta, it may or may not make it to the responsible city official to be able to look at it and go through their stack of emails or their stack of letters that receive. And I know at city council meetings, sometimes there's few public members present, sometimes there's a fair number. We can't just assume that lack of appearance at a council meeting's either disinterest or I agree with it. If you were here, you'd oppose it. So I just ask the council to consider perhaps even pushing this matter till the next meeting before you make a decision, because this has not only, I think, near-term implications, certainly longer-term implications. The second thing I would just ask, I know there are a number of decisions that have been made by previous councils, and some, I was talking to Monica early about one that I guess was approved by the council a decade ago, and it's about to be implemented. I don't know all the legal ramifications, but I would certainly ask and think that something that a previous council approved 5, 10, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and is about to be implemented that, while it may have been a great idea at that time, may not be a great idea in the present, or may not have current public comment. As we grow and folks come into Madison, they may have different views. That's not a proposal, it's just something for council members' consideration. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak against? And before I ask for further comments for those who are here to speak for this, for the benefit of those who are in, yes ma'am, come on up.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Bell, and I live at 555 South Main Street. And like the people before me, I'm not quite sure if I'm fall into the against it or the for it camp, if there are camps. I don't disagree that the Planning and Zoning Commission, all the commissions, all the agencies, your council, need time to review written comments from the public. I don't disagree with that. Planning and Zoning has postponed review of agenda items in the past when public comments of more than a page or two came in shortly before their meeting, because the underlying materials related to the agenda item were posted and delivered so late by the city. The commissioners have expressed their frustration with that, and so has the public. Maybe 5 days out is too big a requirement for smaller submissions. Maybe people need to send a brief email in lieu of personal appearance sometimes, maybe even day off. Certainly the parameters of any restriction on public comment must be weighed and considered, but fundamentally, any restriction must be reasonable, because this is a constitutional right being limited. The imposition of a reasonable restriction on the public must also carry with it reasonable requirements of the city. Reasonableness must be required from both sides. You might think that requiring the public to adhere to strict submission guidelines will naturally lead the city to posting materials a reasonable time before that, so that the public can comment in time. But history does not bear that out. That has not been the case for years, with no imposed deadlines on anyone and the city's unfettered control of access to the materials. This proposal before you today shows you the problem in a microcosm. This matter of the change of notice requirements and everything that went with it was on the agenda for P&Z, Planning and Zoning, on May 18th. The document was never posted to the website. There's no summary of action of the P&Z meeting that was ever posted, and that's required by the Open Meeting Acts under Georgia law. This document was not posted for this meeting of mayor and council until this past Wednesday, June 7th. The document you're looking at today is dated May 23rd. How is that reasonable? How is it even fair? how does it meet the requirements of the First Amendment to the Constitution and the Open Meeting Acts of Georgia? You might suggest that the public can go to the Planning and Development Office anytime to see open zoning files. But did you know that for a time at least, when the city stopped posting zoning submissions, I and others were required to sign an Open Records Act request list kept in the planning office to show who had looked at the file, even though that's not actually required by law. And we had to were required to pay for any copies of documents that could not be obtained any other way than going to inspect the file. Did you know that at HPC, commissioners have been told lately that they can just disregard submissions within some undisclosed time period before the meeting? I would submit to you that you can't just assume that a submission deadline will prompt the city to act reasonably in posting the documents beforehand. I asked you to adopt a fairer, more reasonable deadline for submissions and for posting. Make reasonableness the two-way street that it is intended to be under our law. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else here to speak against? If not, before you come back to us, Monica, and I don't ask our staff to get up and rebuttal because we have zoning laws that our staff has to go by. And for anyone in this room here tonight say that staff don't do that job, I beg your pardon. Our staff goes above and beyond, following the guidelines and the procedures that they are supposed to follow. And at that moment, before you come, I'm going to ask our attorneys to sort of answer some of those questions Ms. Bell was bringing to us tonight. You or Jay, it doesn't matter with me.
Your Honor, the person who's going to have to live with this is the newly appointed city attorney, so I'm going to defer to him for his comments because I will not be here to help administer this, but I certainly would say this, that the expansion of the time is certainly a move in the right direction as set forth in this proposed amendment, plus it's mandatory.
Thank you. Jay?
There was a lot of information there, Mayor. I'll try to do my best to address that. But going back to Monica's first point, last year the legislature amended the zoning procedures law for the better, or so they say. Makes it a little more confusing. Every city is doing this currently, is trying to catch up with the state law. And the way I like to think about it, Mayor and Council, is the ZPL sets a standard down here that you must abide by. Anything you go above and beyond, the city still has to abide up by, but because they're putting those on themselves. So the more guidelines you put on yourselves, the more you have to abide by, the more they're trying to trip up. I think that's what Frank's basic rationale was to Monica, if I got that correct. So there's that. There's also in the public hearing there is a thing of fairness, and the fairness is that the people for it have the same amount of opportunity to present their case as the people against it. What I'm hearing is a case in Madison, I haven't seen it in action, is that there's a document dump the night of on your desks, and it maybe has good intentions, but it also could be used as a gotcha tactic. It's like, well, I gave you everything you had and you didn't consider it gotcha. And it's impossible for you to review 100 pages on this on the night of. And so I think some required advance notice of documents is a good thing. People can still obviously show up and speak at the public hearing. They don't have to sign up. That's their constitutional right, and the ZPL allows that. So I think all of these are good things to protect you and for you all to be able to make informed decisions. As far as posting documents online, I think it's probably a good practice. I don't think that it needs to be required in an ordinance of any kind or anything like that, but it's probably good practice, and they can do open records requests. They can come down and see it, and all of those things are allowed by law. If they see a notice in the paper and they do an open records request for The documents, by law, the city's got to give them over within 3 days. So there are opportunities for them to do it. Most cities do post a lot of documents online just to save the city clerk from having to answer hundreds of open records requests. But those are the main issues that I heard raised. If there's any specific questions from mayor and council, I'll try to address those as well. But those are just kind of the legal thoughts. ZPL sets the baseline. Any other guidelines you put on yourselves, you raise that bar and you got to abide by them regardless if it's state law or not. So any other questions?
Attorney Crowley, if I could, when I mentioned earlier the sections that were sent to us from Atlanta that we have no choice but to go along with, I neglected to mention the letters for conditional uses and variances. That also is required by Atlanta law. We have no real discretion to accept that or not. Is that right?
The letters to individual property owners?
The ones that have abutting property lines or cross right-of-ways?
That is not required by state law.
That is not.
That would be a guideline, and a lot of cities do that. They do self-inflict that to give more notice to citizens. That is not part of the ZPL. The only one that is if the city is placing a variance or condition on a property owner, they have to send notice to that property owner that they are doing that. But there's no requirement that they send it to every notice. That's what the sign in the front yard is for, is to give notice to those neighboring
Okay.
property owners.
Any more questions, Attorney? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there anyone here to speak? You want to-
Sure. Okay, so a couple of things. I just want to thank the people who spoke for their civility this evening. It's nice to see public discourse lifting, and that's helpful. So a couple of things here. So we put a 5-day notice on it if there is a interest in making that a little bit more accessible or responsive. I hear that. If it could at least be maybe 3 days, that would be helpful. What is unhelpful is, like, I will give an example. For the Foster Park scenario, we had several public hearings where a whole notebook was placed on the table. For instance, for some of our HPC things, we've had, our planning and zoning things, we've had emails that arrived at 4:30 and then complaints to why that wasn't circulated to the board. And that's not necessarily about anybody that's in this room. Those are, we get comments across the board from the community. So what we're asking for in that response time period for written comments, this is not to limit any oral comments. People are going to still come and say what they want to say. But we would like a reasonable time period to get it to all decision makers. Then I want to add a couple of things. As far as I know, and I'm not perfect, but there has never been a point where anybody's come into the current planning and zoning office and made an application for public access that they didn't get sent to Ashley. We don't process information record requests. We don't log them. As far as I know, all of that's running through the city clerk. If you come in and you ask us for something that is less than 10 pages, typically we're just going to copy it and hand it to you because that's good customer service. If it's more than that, yes, it is going to the city clerk, and we're following the normal open information procedures that we always follow. So I'm sorry if Ms. Bell has suffered that, and I remain unaware of that as the planning director. If that's occurred, she will have my apologies after this meeting. So a couple other things. A lot of the things we post on the city's website that I've heard some frustration expressed with tonight are courtesy documents. For the first 10 years I worked for the City of Madison, we didn't prepare planning reports. We showed up, we gave oral comments, and that was it. And frankly, and this is no concern about John's leadership, but with some of the austerity measures we're talking about and the limitations on staff and the volume of growth, we may have to go back to not doing as much overkill as we're doing. It is frustrating to do more than that's required, and still it's never good enough. So I know that Ken has researched all the surrounding communities for time frames, what's posted to the website. If we are required to post summaries of action on the website, I need to know about that, because that's brand new information to me. My understanding is summary of actions have to be available upon request, But as far as posting to the website, my understanding under ZPL is the only required posting on the website is the actual agenda, and that's it. We're not required to publish the applications. It is entirely reasonable to ask the planning department at the time the application is made to publish everything we've got. That's reasonable, and we're willing to do that. What is also frustrating is because no one turns in a complete application. You have no citizen, corporate or resident, who ever turns in a complete application. And if that is our standard, you're going to hear from a lot more people than just me, because the way it works is people do the best of their ability to turn in a complete application. Staff needs a day or two to review that. And as we review that, we find a deficiency or a clarification that's needed. And as we find that information, it is entirely reasonable that that get posted as well. Nobody comes in with a perfect application. And so if that means that we need to push the deadline even further out and require people to have applications in 60 days in advance, so it gives us some time to review it and point out the deficiencies, okay. But we start bumping up against people that come in for preservation decisions. They're frustrated that 15 days seems too long, and zoning, 30 days seems too long. Staff needs time to consume the information, and we want to be able to get it out there. Again, once it appears in the paper, if anybody wants to come in and request that information, if it's less than 10 pages, we're going to copy and hand it to them. We're not going to be complicated about that, and I'm certainly not going to keep a log of who's asked for information. So please take into consideration that staff has to respond to not only the people that are concerned about change and growth, but we also have to be responsive to the property owners and the business owners that are making application. And we're always stuck in the middle, and it's never good enough. So please choose standards that are reasonable, and if you want to bifurcate the issue and sit and smoke on it a little bit, we're open to that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Is there anyone here want to speak for this text amendment? Yes, sir.
Very briefly, I just want to make some remarks in support of the Dark Madison Coalition. My name is Frank Walker. By the way, good afternoon to you all, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon, sir.
And others. I'm Frank Walsh. I live at 651 Dixie Avenue, and I'm on the mailing list of the Historic Madison Coalition. And I learned about this matter of the Planning and Zoning Commission had to consider. And I believe you have the letter from the Historic Madison Coalition before you. It was a well-researched and thoughtful letter, and I tried as best I could to understand it all. And the 5 points at the bottom, I'm coming to speak in support of, and there's been some footnoting and possibly some addendum from maybe Ms. Murray and General Whitcomb and Ms. Bell. I'm not sure how that fits into the letter that I received, but I just want to stand in support of the 5 points in that letter and encourage the City Council to consider them positively and adopt them as soon as possible and get on with it. And there have been some other things that have been said that would go with that, but I just thank you for the opportunity of letting me be supportive. And I hope that the City Council is most appreciative of what the Historic Madison Coalition does in terms of their focal point and keen interest in such matters for the city. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak for? If not, it's back to our council. And I'd just like to urge my council members to just keep one thing in mind. We always like to listen to outside opinions from other attorneys. But our council will pay our attorneys to listen to our attorneys. So we listen to outside, but our main focus is to be guided by the attorney that this city pays to represent our cities. And we have to listen to our attorney. But we also listen to what you say, but our main focus is to listen to what our attorney has to say to us. So it's back to this council for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'll make some comments.
Sure,
I'm not
please.
prepared to make a motion, but I think Ms. Murray and Mr. Whitcomb and Ms. Bell and Mr. Walsh and Monica too. And I too am glad that it was cordial and civil. And my sort of frustration is just what you touched on. We have some learned people here who have opinions, and I can sit here and listen to them and say, you know, all that makes sense. But the people to whom we pay to give us legal advice, while I think we all have the same desired outcome to make folks happy and not to hide anything, and I say make folks happy, give information freely in a timely manner, both sides don't necessarily match up with how to do that. But I think at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're on legal ground to do all that we can. It sounded like Monica felt like there were some, rather than require the posted applications on the web by X number of days, just to make it an effort to do so in a very timely manner, and maybe we can accomplish some of these things that our legal advice tells us we need to do away, and also help the public.
Another council member?
Yeah, Mayor, I understand the purpose of limiting the document dumps. It is frustrating to receive documents very late, and you really can't consider them. But the part I don't like about this is the 5-day thing. If you look at the example of this particular week and this meeting and this agenda, as Ms. Bell said, the details which inspired some of the comments and the letters from Ms. Murray, the details were posted on Wednesday. That's 5 days before this meeting. So at the same time that those are posted, the public's supposed to be able to form a written opinion and get it to us simultaneously. It seems to be really, I don't see how that's workable. My personal recommendation, I would ask the council to consider, is to approve the items which I delineated, which have been passed by the legislature, and we have no choice but to go along with and implement those into our zoning ordinances. And then the other items, the letters to adjoining property owners and the 5-day requirement, that seems to me to be part of a bigger discussion we need to have, how to make this process fair for everyone. And I don't think the 5-day thing is a fair way to do it. It's
But are they following the guidelines that they're supposed to follow, Councilmember Joyce? Does our staff follow the guidelines that they're supposed to be following?
Well, I'm not sure what the requirements are for legal posting of documents. All I know is if we make the public, if we force them to put all their written documents in 5 days in advance, then we better make it 10 days in advance for the city, which to give people a chance to do their research and to write their documents. And that seems like a really tough burden on the city. So I'm not saying they're not doing it now, but does it seem fair to you, Mayor, to have the agenda and the staff report posted Wednesday, which would be the same day that the deadline for the public to comment on it?
Okay, so I just want to add, there's a little bit of a fallacy there. I
A
don't
little bit of what? I'm
There's a
sorry?
little bit of a fallacy there. So that agenda is posted and was posted, or not agenda, but the public notice was given on April 27th, okay? And then since it has to go to the Planning Commission, all the documents were posted for the Planning Commission by May 18th. And there was a public hearing on May 18th. So all that information could have already been responded to starting May 18th. Now, I'm not saying that we don't get additional little bits and thereafter, but remember that unlike our design review bodies, they get the information and they make a decision and they're done. The Planning Commission is holding a meeting on the average 2 weeks prior to your meeting.
Okay,
And
but-
we have the bulk of documents posted for the Planning Commission, including the staff report. And so the public has access to that as of the May 18th meeting.
Okay, I try to go to planning and zoning meetings exactly for the reason you said,
Yes,
so that
sir.
I can get more than 5 darn days' notice
Yes, sir.
for the things I'm expected to vote on. There's at least, there's other council members who don't like to go to planning and zoning because they think that should be done in a public setting. I don't argue with that.
Yes, sir.
I, as a council member, received this planning report, which has the detail of what we're talking about tonight. I received that by email Tuesday. The
Yes, sir.
public received it on the Wet City website Wednesday.
And it is 90% the same report that the Planning Commission had and was a public document on May 18th, is what I'm saying.
Well,
If I may, and just because I spent time looking into all of this, when I did go to the Planning and Zoning website, there was no reference to this document. So did you guys take it down? Because the other documents from the other meetings haven't been taken down. And I'm not
No,
disputing you.
ma'am, I'm just saying
trying to
that it was
understand.
available because it was distributed to the Planning Commission on May 18th.
Right.
It could have been requested at any time. I don't know that it was
Oh,
posted.
okay. All right. It could
And
be
actually, given the time constraints, I am moving toward being able to make sure that the agenda and the notice are out there and the applications, and we may need to start dialing back our time frame on other things to make sure those are absolutely complete. And so if we're going to meet the state law requirements in a very comprehensive way, we want to do those first. And so the rush to doing the staff report and then doing a second staff report for the council, including the vote of the Planning Commission and any concerns that was raised, we may need to prioritize the other things so that we are consistently providing that at least 30 days out. And that's kind of where I'm leaning based on hearing this discussion. But I didn't want to say that you didn't have the information. I wanted to say that anybody who is following that, there's a precursor meeting that the bulk of that information is available, and we could have, there could be review of it at that point. And if you think that, that there's a minimum that we should be posting to the website, then we can start trying to make prioritizations to do that. But I was unclear even tonight that the summary of record has to be on there. That's new information to us. And I would certainly, the first thing I'll be doing tomorrow is sending an email to Frank Jenkins and seeking concurrence on that opinion. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure that the public knows that there's been that opportunity to comment since May 18th.
Monica, by summary of records, you mean the actual documents? Is that what you? Summary.
No, sir. Ms. Bell said summary of action, and so,
There's no requirement to do that. I just want to make that clear.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Sure. I've been listening. We've had a lot of great discussion. I think I have a question for Monica. We don't have a motion on the floor, so we really can't go anywhere. But Monica, time-wise with the state, is it imperative that we take action tonight, or can we come back next month and talk about it?
So what we would like to recommend is if you would like to deliberate on the submittal timeframe for written requirements, you certainly can bifurcate what's in front of you and put that to the side. We can chew on that a little bit. We can look at what's reasonable. And then the things that are in terms of the extended notice, advance notice, we do need you to go ahead and act on that because state law takes effect July 1st. And so honestly, that'll allow us to take a stronger look at that whole section of zoning administration because, you know, one of the things we heard tonight is that why don't we treat it all the same? And that's because legislative actions and quasi-judicial actions have never been treated the same, and I'm sure that Frank's going to want to weigh in on that. So maybe bifurcating the issue buys you more time to deliberate and hear more public comment.
Which I think was my suggestion, yeah.
Well, we can get a motion to
May-
approve that. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment, if you will. I think that is the perfect solution, is to go ahead and take care of what state law requires us to do. I feel like, you know, this is not necessarily the first time we have heard that the public feels like there's an issue with information and that sort of thing. That's great. This is sort of an ongoing a critique, if you will, issue, if you will, that sort of thing. I would like to, going forward, I would like to propose that the board sit down and have one of our workshops that John is so famous in helping us organize, and actually sit down and let's hammer this out. I don't have an understanding about really, first of all, what you do is not, excuse me, what our planner does is not simple. It's complicated. I understand. There's a lot of moving parts, and so you can't really sort of simplify it by saying, this should be complete, it should be there now. I get that. But on the other hand, this keeps coming up. Let's put this to bed. Let's sit down as a city council with staff, get a clear understanding. I mean, I can go into Monica's office and have my own chat with her, but I don't want to do that. I want to work with the entire council, with staff, so that we're all on the same page. We're clear about the challenges the staff faces in order to produce information, the challenges the city, which we understand our public faces in trying to make reasonable comments. Anyway, I am just saying that I would like us to put this on an agenda for further work. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Wagner, would you agree to allow Planning Director Monica and our legal counsel to get together and come up with something and bring that back to our work session?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let them do that.
If that's a good place to start.
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, my brain down here shut down has no battery, so I cannot offer the motion, but if somebody would just make a motion to approve the state guidelines with the knowledge that we're going to go ahead and work on those other details, I think that would put us in a good working place.
That's what I was hoping to begin with. Mr. Mayor, I would move that we accept the changes to the zoning ordinance reflecting on the legal advertising, the sign posting, and the application deadline change, which I believe are the 3 items that are required by the changes to state law, and to table the balance of the report.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. And Monica, if you would get with the attorney, and y'all can sit down and come up with some strategy. Thank you so much. Contract deed of gift, Madison Transitional Development. Monica?
Yes, sir. You're already sick of hearing my face, seeing my face and hearing me talk tonight. So the first one is A, is not ready. We have not received that from Mr. Terrell. It was supposed to be signed and over here, and it is not. So I'm going to ask you to table that to your next regular meeting.
Which one is that, Monica?
That is the contract deed of gift for the Markham's Hill development.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
It has been prepared, legal has reviewed it, and it has not been signed and returned.
Ready to go. Mr. Mayor, I move that we table that contract for deed of gift Madison Traditional Development until our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Thank you. Monica again.
Yes, sir. So you have an MOU before you for the AARP grant. I'll remind you that this is for a pathway and trail improvement grant, including some footbridges. The award is not really super public. We haven't been advertising it because they asked us to keep it under wraps. But we can't do that. We need an MOU, and that is a legal execution document at our level. So I'd like to recommend to you the grant that you recommended for submittal, and we have received it. I believe if the press is interested, there are details. It was a very exclusive award this year. They don't usually do this much, and we were one of very few communities that received it, and so they can follow up at a later point to get details on that. But it's at $48,000, and the MOU is in front of you. And the request is for the mayor to be authorized to sign and execute the MOU. Just so you know, this is fast. We have to have it fully implemented by November 1st.
A great grant to receive. Can I get a motion to approve that?
Could I ask a question beforehand, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
There's a under number 4, the scope of work. I love all those things, but $48,000, I assume, there's no way in the world we can do all that for $48,000. I assume some of that's general fund like, for example, sidewalks, we have made wonderful progress lately on repairing sidewalks. Are these specific just to this one path?
They're specific to two specific paths that were in the document.
This is the president's?
Well, it's, I believe if you look in your packet, you should see the red trail and the gold trail, or gold path and the red path. So the connectivity of those, and then President's Park Trail included. So those three areas, the two walking routes have crosswalks and grinding down of curbs and some ADA, what do you call the little pads? Rumble strips, is, you know, something like that. John, do you know that word? I can't think of that word.
Detectable.
Mats.
Are these maps you're done? I don't have any maps in my packet.
They were in the packet when you approved the grant. I'm sorry if it
okay.
wasn't redistributed. So they itemized the work product. We know that there's some of those deliverables that will not fall within the scope of the budget that we'll be able to do, and we sought clarification that they're not going to hang us out to dry. They know that those DOT items may not happen before November 1st.
Because they're great. It's a great list.
It is a great list.
It's just, you got to get GDOT to sign off on the crosswalk, auditories, crossing signs. I love all this stuff, but.
Phil Schmelzer is a visionary.
Okay.
But we will be doing
He is, indeed.
we'll be doing as much as we can do on that, and my understanding is, so unlike other grants where you do it and you receive the drawdown as you do it, this one we receive all the money up front, we do as much as we can, and then we file a report on the back end.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the MOU between the City of Madison and AARP and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Thank you. 2023-2024 James Main Street MOU. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Main Street Madison has been a Georgia exceptional community for almost 30 years now, and that goes through a process of where the city and the manager, as well as the governing board, which is currently the DDA, is able to oversee certain certifications and requirements to maintain this certification and to receive this accreditation each year. As in years past, there are certain deliverables that both the manager, which is myself, the Main Street Director, as well as the city and the governing board have to come into a compliance with in order to receive this annual accreditation. The MOU outlines all of these deliverables, which includes different concepts of the strategic plan, which we participate in, as well as the work plan, which we follow by along with the board, training opportunities and things of that nature. So it's all outlined, and I won't review every deliverable because it's about 4 pages worth, but you've seen the Main Street MOU, and it's up for approval for your review. Should you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time with the mayor's approval.
If our council has had a chance to review, we could get a motion for second to approve this MOU for Main Street.
I move that we approve it, Mr. Mayor.
With that about discussion, all in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask Councilmember Latham to be sure that the Board of Directors, who is the DDA, gets a copy of Article 2? We're kind of signing them to things that's what they agree to. So we're signing the DDA to agree to that, everything under Article 2.
They've already seen that. That's
Okay.
been at the DDA meetings.
Glad to hear it, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you.
sits in on the DDA meetings, and
been
she
a
keeps
few.
us going in the right direction. Karen's fabulous. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Latham. Thanks, Karen, appreciate that. The 2023 CHIP paperwork, Monica.
Yes, sir. And I just wanted to say that Karen provides a monthly staff report to the Downtown Development Authority of where things are. So the 2023 CHIP paperwork, so this will be our third CHIP. The housing team has worked hard to secure grant funding to rehab single-family owner-occupied dwellings to keep as much affordable and workforce housing viable. So this will be grant number 3. The first grant they received was $300,000, the second grant was around $306,000, and this one is for $400,000. It will allow them to work in the target area. I know we have other areas in town that are in need, where we have single-family homes that are maybe not enjoying the same prosperity, but the target area has to be where we were working, and so that continues to go to the Canaan area. And I know that we have other areas of need that have contacted me. So I just be aware that when we first started doing the urban renewal plan, we had around 80 houses that were considered dilapidated and substandard. This should take care of the last 7. And so this is what happens when you adopt a plan, you stick to it, you hold to the course, you get it done. So this is the last $400,000 that's available. The housing team's already been briefed, and they know to start making residents in the area aware. This time it'll go full area, which means, and I'll say this for the press's benefit, I am trying to be short, it will be extended to Wheat, March, Garnett, Billups, MLK, and some of Whitehall. So each year the area has gotten bigger. Now that doesn't mean if there's somebody on MAP who missed out previously that they can't apply, but we get a little bit more concentrically larger each year. This will be the last round of CHIP that the community will be eligible for, because the census, when it redistricted us, drew the lines larger into the county and picked up the more affluent areas. And so even though our population hasn't gained in any wealth in any way, the increase of more affluent residency in that census district bumps us out of any of the disadvantaged population monies. So we'll have to look for alternative ways to try to restore some of our housing stock in the future. And there's a whole smattering of documents that require the mayor's signature. And so that includes adoption of policy from DCA, which you have no choice to amend or alter. It is, you adopt the policy as is, and we have to follow the program as is, because that money is comes down from HUD. And so the housing and urban redevelopment constraints are tight. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, we're going to be in the same area as usual. It'll do another 7 to 10 houses, and this should be the last housing push at single-family home occupied income qualified housing restoration.
This is a great program, Monica, and your department's done a wonderful job over many years implementing this. Real plus for the city of Madison. You touched on it. Is there hope in the future that there will be other areas of Madison which will qualify as a target area so we can spread some of these benefits to other needy areas of Madison?
Not using the CHIP program. We're investigating some other programs. Kemp rolled out a new program, but it seems to be mostly, pardon me, seems to be mostly aimed at new construction. There are some programs under USDA, and there's some federal home bank programs. So we're going to have to find another program because our census numbers are not going to change.
And I think
Not really.
when I asked you that before, you told me that it's pretty much based on a lot of census data regarding income and family size and a lot of other factors that make Canaan perfect for that, but not other neighborhoods. Is that right?
Yes, sir. At the time that we started the urban renewal plan, Canaan was running at 50% poverty and higher, and it was confirmed. And then when the census blocks got redrawn in 2010, they take a little bit of the city and run out into the county. So do we know we have issues on Vine Street? Yes, sir, we do. But when it runs out and picks up Buckhead Manor, poverty drops down, and the income qualification ability to use this program becomes nil.
I echo what Councilmember George said. A lot of families have benefited from this grant
I hope
program.
so. And
Thank you so
we've
much.
benefited from stabilization of the tax base in certain areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Do we need a motion to approve this CHIP paperwork? I think so.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor? Show of hands. Opposed, none. Vote unanimously. Thank you so much. City Manager Clem, if you would come and just briefly say something about the fiscal year 23 brief budget discussion. I know we have our books. Budget books.
Just want to make sure everyone realizes it's FY '24. And I just wanted to put the agenda item on this evening, just to remind both the council and the members of the general public that our budget hearing is 21 June, to be continued the 28th of June. So we have two opportunities for a comment. I distributed a document to all of you this evening that is surely a certain remedy for any insomniacs we have on the council. But I hope you have an opportunity to review that. And I just want to remind you, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
that our staff, our finance director and myself, remain available to meet one-on-one with any council members that have issues of concern or questions about the budget any day or night from now until 21 June, and then thereafter the 28th of June. So we just want to remind you that we have a public hearing coming up that'll go 21 June and 28 June.
Thank you,
Is
sir.
this volume one of one volume, I hope? or-
Very uniquely done, though. Now, that's our council member, if you got any questions for John, please make an appointment to go talk to him about this. Thank you, sir. Public service appointments, Ken?
Evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So you have three, or the city of Madison has three boards that have mid-year appointments. So that's Cemetery Stewardship Commission, Green Space Conservation Commission, and the Public Arts Commission. And that would be why all of those that are up for appointment tonight are full terms, because this is, at the end of June is when the terms end, and folks either decide to re-up or say, I've done enough for the city in the past 3 years. So the Cemetery Stewardship Commission, Nancy Green and Martha Harrell are seeking reappointment. Melissa Pichet is also can be reappointed, but she has not indicated whether she wishes to be so. So at this point, though there are 3 terms available, you'll be looking at 2 appointments. Green Space Commission, Conservation Commission is very similar. Ben Prue and Phil Smeltzer are seeking reappointment. And as you all know, Rick Crown has hung up his loppers and shovel for working with the Green Space Commission after how many years? 30 years. So I guess that's a good retirement number. And then Public Arts Commission, we had 1 person move from town and 2 people who have put in quite a few years and are seeking a little bit of rest and relaxation. We've had 1 person apply for that, so if you think of anybody who'd be good for that commission, it'd be great. But Jennifer Lockridge is moving over from the Green Space Commission to the Public Arts Commission, which is where she wanted to be in the first place. So Phil said grace over her abandoning the Green Space Commission. And then lastly, the Housing Opportunity Commission, they have 2 terms that opened up. That's why those, actually 3 terms, and that's why those are unexpired terms. And you have before you 2 people who have applied for those unexpired terms, which leaves 1 still available.
Okay. So let's go with the Cemetery Stewardship Commission first.
I move that we appoint Martha Harrell and Nancy Green. Is it Nancy Green? Yeah.
Nancy Green.
Okay.
Green, yeah. To the Cemetery Commission, Stewardship Commission.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Green Space Conservation Commission.
Yeah, as the official liaison, Mr. Mayor, I would be glad to endorse both Mr. Prue and Mr. Smeltzer. I believe there is a Z in there, is there not, Ken?
It's like
Okay.
smelt.
Both really strong. We just gave them awards at our volunteer dinner just a few weeks ago. So I would be more than glad to move that Ben Prue and Philip Smeltzer be reappointed to full terms for the Green Space Conservation Commission.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Housing.
And there is one more opening then, if I could, since Jennifer has moved.
I guess that would be true, yes.
Okay,
And that would be an unexpired term,
okay.
I think.
Housing Opportunity Commission.
Mr. Mayor, I move we appoint Mark Tackix and Cheryl Thomas.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none, vote unanimously. And Public Arts Commission.
Yeah, having been a liaison with Green Space, Jennifer served very well on that. As Ken mentioned, I think we sort of maneuvered her into that since there was not an opening for where she really wanted to be, which seems to be Public Arts Commission. So I would be glad to make that motion that we appoint Jennifer Lockridge to a 3-year term to the Public Arts Commission.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none, vote unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir.
Ken, we have had excellent people applying for these commissions. Thank you. I mean, it's kind of hard not to vote for them when you read what they've done, and it's just great. Thank you.
We keep a lookout for them.
And that includes the 4 applicants for the HPC that we had last month.
Right.
I mean, really good candidates applying.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any comments from the public tonight? Sure.
Hey, Mr. Mayor and Council, Steve Whitcomb, et cetera. You know, I'm a citizen. I just wanted to thank you all, and thank this city. I mean, we have sometimes contentious issues, but the fact is, we have a staff in Madison that works like beavers in a birch forest, trying to make Madison and Morgan County a better place. And they do their jobs daily. I mean, whether it's a storm or just a sunny day with a sunflower seed being planted, it's done. And I thank you. I'm just one of the John Q. 4,508 Madisonians, John Q. Publics that live here, but I appreciate that. And I think I speak for a lot of public and the citizens. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no more public comments. This meeting is adjourned, and I would ask that we get...
Mr. Mayor?
No, we can adjourn.
I know, we get a motion to go into executive session. We get a motion to go into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session for
discuss
legal
real estate.
and personnel.
Second.
All in favor, show of hands, opposed, none. Give y'all a couple minutes to refresh yourself if you need to.